you have decided to run for the mayor of New York City, and what is your understanding of our diverse AAPI community, and how will that bring into your understanding and your vision of the city?
Good evening. Good evening. Ni hao, namaste, annyeonghaseyo, assalamu alaikum. It is wonderful to be here with all of you. I'm Brad Lander. I'm the New York City Controller. I'm a longtime friend of CACF. I'm a lifelong housing activist, and I'm a Brooklyn dad. And nothing has brought me so much joy as raising my kids in the city. They went from pre-K to 12th grade in New York City public schools, and what it means to have a city that is as diverse as this one, with this big an AAPI community, is extraordinary. New York is the greatest immigrant city the world has ever known. That's been true for 400 years, but it is especially urgent right now. We have an emergency with Donald Trump in the White House trying to demonize immigrant New Yorkers, and we are not going to let that happen on our watch. And that means we're going to show up. I think it's worth starting by reminding us that of the 8 million New Yorkers, 40% are immigrants, are foreign-born. 50% live in mixed status households, including 1 million children. And of course, a very big part of that is Asian American New Yorkers. This is the largest Asian American city in the world outside of Asia, and that is a huge benefit in business startups, in political leadership, in creativity, in arts and culture, in every way. When I was in the city council, I was proud to represent Kensington, one of the large Bangladeshi neighborhoods in the city. So I reached out to Kensington. I made sure we were working with people there. I hired a young woman there, Shahana Hanif, and I'm happy to say now she's the first Muslim woman in the New York City Council. And to me, that's the model that we need, a city that reaches out to everyone and finds leaders everywhere.
Okay, and that is time. The rest of the questions I will be asking are predetermined by CACF. The questions were carefully crafted by the organization, and they're structured based on issues that are important to the AAPI community. And so this is your opportunity to tell us how you plan on addressing these issues that are important to us. Okay, let's get started. The first question was informed by CACF's youth, who are a part of CACF's Asian American Student Advocacy Project.
Love the ASAP Project. Let's give a shout out to them.
So now in the 2022 to 23 school year, students who are English language learners, or ELLs, they make up a whopping 17% of New York City's student population. That's over 134,000 students. They represent obviously a very rich and diverse linguistic and cultural background. Students who are ELLs of Asian and Middle Eastern descent make up over 20% of all ELLs in the New York City public school system, which I am a proud graduate. Their needs obviously go beyond interpretation and translation services. What is your plan on addressing challenges ELL students face in public schools, and how would you create school communities where ELL students will thrive, and also importantly, where they feel they belong?
Yeah. So you heard the numbers. This is a critical question, and there's so many good answers to it. Of course, ELL students have different learning styles and needs themselves, so there's a lot of models we can use. Some students will thrive in dual language programs, and it's great in dual language programs to have native speakers. And so I want to see us have more dual language programs in a wide range of languages. That's a great way to build a community in which both languages, multiple languages, are appreciated. It's hard to learn a new language, and if you're an English language learner, it's hard to learn English, but if you're in a dual language English-Chinese program, or an English-Korean, or an English-Spanish, it's hard to learn the other language. So you're getting helped by that other student, and you see how it works, and that builds great communities. But there's other models as well. Last year I attended the graduation of what used to be called Newcomers High School, is now Atlas, and that's a whole high school full of people who arrived here not speaking English within the last 2 years. Brilliant kids learning English together. That's another amazing community. At the same time, so many students will just land in a neighborhood public school where they happen to live, and they've got to feel supported even if there aren't a lot of other people in that school speaking their language, and that means having great parent coordinator and social workers who speak the languages of different families so that you know you'll be welcomed. I just want to tell you one quick story. Last Friday, I was the commencement speaker at City College, and the valedictorian is a young woman who arrived here 6 years ago not speaking any English. And now she's the valedictorian of one of the best public colleges anywhere in the United States. And we have this program in New York City that lets CUNY students come to work for New York City without having to take the civil service exam for 2 years. And she's going to be working in the Department of Homeless Services in New York City shelters. That's what can happen when we welcome English language learners and enable them to thrive. It's not just great for her, it is great for New York City.
Actually, I have one quick follow-up here. Many AAPI students, especially, they live in working and immigrant communities, and they attend underfunded schools. What steps will you take to make sure that these schools receive adequate services?
Yeah, I mean, this is critical. You know, we have this thing called the Fair Student Funding Formula, but it has to do more to recognize schools that have significant challenges, because if you're in a working class community, if you don't have as many parents that have the ability to be there after school or to provide resources for supports, or who can pay for an after school program, that's got to be on New York City. So we can use the resources coming from the class size reduction law. One thing that's significant is a lot of overcrowded schools are in working class Asian American neighborhoods. So what a great opportunity to say, as we use that money to reduce class size, we're going to focus on growing after-school programs in partnership with community organizations like many of the ones in this room. Let's use more dual language programs. Let's use that model of collaborative team teaching that gets a second teacher in the classroom. We absolutely can make sure that the resources we're providing get to working class immigrant communities and make it possible for those young people to thrive.
Okay, and Comptroller Lander, let's move on now to public safety. CACF prioritizes understanding and advocacy for alternate forms of safety. Issues like addressing anti-Asian hate, including anti-Sikh hate and Islamophobia, critical to supporting safety in our communities, and also alternative policies for responding to mental health crisis intervention is a last resort in both the AAPI community, which is a heavily immigrant community, and other marginalized communities, as it often leads to the involvement of police. What would be your vision and policies to build a city where people feel safe? You have 2 minutes.
I'm so happy to get to talk about this here because I have a comprehensive plan for keeping New York safe, and it includes a big section on combating hate crimes. And at the heart of that is a CACF program called AAPI Classroom that I have been thrilled to partner with you on. And I got to go see it live and in person in Midwood High School, where a CACF young person named Julie Wu, who I think is here today, she taught the class. And what CACF does is it educates young people, trains high schoolers in Asian American history and culture, and also the dangers, the warning signs of anti-Asian hate. And then those students go to one of their teachers and say, I would like to teach the rest of my class. And the rest of the class at Midwood High School was largely Black and Latino and Muslim and Jewish. And she taught this amazing class. And you know how it is when kids are teaching each other. They might listen to their teachers, they might enjoy a field trip, but they were so awake to learning from her. And I want to do that for every single group in New York City. I'd like to make sure that Muslim students can do that, and Black students can do that, and Latino students, and Jewish students, because I think the best way to combat hate is to help young people see each other's stories. So that's my big plan for education on hate crimes. I guess the other thing I'll mention quickly is my #1 commitment on public safety is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, because we do not have to be a city where several thousand of our mentally ill neighbors sleep on subway platforms and sidewalks and the stoops of our building. No amount of policing will connect a mentally ill homeless person to stable housing and services. So at the heart of my plan is a program called Housing First, and it's working in Houston and Denver and Salt Lake City to take people straight from the street into housing and services. It works 70 to 90% of the time. We can end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, and that will make New York City safer for everyone.
Okay, that is time. And actually what you said kind of dovetails into what I'm about to ask you about, which is about public benefits and the staggering impacts of the effects we are seeing under this current federal administration and their cuts to programs, including increasing disenrollments from health insurance and food benefits, even for children, pregnant women, and others with health conditions requiring care. Medicaid cuts also greatly will impact AAPI New Yorkers. Over half of all AAPI women giving birth in New York City are on Medicaid, and notably, AAPI children are the highest percentage of children uninsured by race in New York City. So in the face of all these staggering budget cuts that goes into social benefits and public benefits, how are you planning on investing in the health of children and families and all adults across New York City amid these debilitating federal cuts?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important question. This forum would matter any year because it's always true that immigrant communities aren't getting their fair share and the need to invest in health and education and safety is critical. But right now, with what Donald Trump is doing, savaging Medicaid, cutting food stamps, demonizing and deporting students, we now see that a New York City high school student, Dylan Contreras, was tricked by ICE and then arrested and is now cycling through prisons in different states. So we need a mayor who will stand up to Donald Trump. When Elon Musk and Trump stole $80 million from New York City, I uncovered it. I forced the mayor into court to get it back. I issued the first report of any financial officer anywhere in the country just 1 week after Trump was elected to say, where's all the federal funding that comes in to New York City's budget for healthcare, for food stamps, for education? How much of it flows to our nonprofits like CACF and those in the room? And what can we do to get ready? And I've laid out a real clear plan. We need $1 billion more in our general reserve to protect against cuts when they come so we can put those resources where we need. We need to take it to Republicans. So I went down and did a town hall last week as part of my campaign in Nicole Malliotakis' district. She was the one Republican who voted for that bill. We have to make that unacceptable and make sure we start to get those resources flowing back. And then New York City needs a mayor who knows how that budget works and make sure we invest in the smartest programs. That includes maternal health, like doula care, and making sure that mothers have the resources that they need. It means expanding early childhood education. So there's good free childcare for every 2-year-old and 3-year-old. It means supporting after-school programs and targeting mental health services to our young people. We're going to need to stand up and fight Donald Trump, and we're going to need to govern strategically to provide the services where cuts happen.
A quick follow-up to that. You mentioned having to claw back the $80 million there.
Yeah.
How are you going to keep Donald Trump out of New York City? Is
Yeah.
it a matter of going to the courts?
I mean, it's going to need to be a kind of all hands on deck. So yes, when they steal $80 million, you go into court and you sue to get it back. And, I was glad, I will give this a minute, the chancellor, Melissa Avalos Roman, she stood up for Dylan Contreras. New York City is pushing to get him back. So when you're right on the law, you sue. Sometimes you need to be really strategic in how you move money around. So I'll give you one example. We want to protect abortion and contraception and reproductive and gender-affirming care. We should be doing that in an independent health authority we set up with just city and state and private money so we can protect those services even if Medicaid dollars start to have strings attached and they say you can't do those things in New York Health and hospitals. So go into court when you're right on the law. Be strategic in how you manage the money and then stand up and fight politically. That's why I was down in Nicole Malliotakis' district. That's why when Ras Baraka was detained by ICE, I rushed out to Newark to be there to call on ICE to release him, because that's what it looks like when a mayor is standing up for their people. When he got released, I was really struck by this. I was lucky to be there when he came out and when ICE let him go. And somebody asked him, Mayor, why are you standing up for immigrants instead of the people of Newark? And this is a black Newark mayor. And he said, look, folks, everyone who lives in Newark is a person of Newark, is a resident of Newark. I'm going to be a mayor that stands up and fights for every person in New York City. We need a mayor who doesn't work for Donald Trump. We need a mayor who recognizes that statue in the harbor says the future of our city is the folks in this room, and we'll stand up and fight for them.
Okay, let's move on to language accessibility. Many AAPI families rely on public benefits and city support for housing, healthcare, food insecurity, and many other needs, yet they often encounter cultural and linguistic barriers. Language access is an essential part of our community's abilities to equitably engage in city services, resources, and feel integrated within their communities. How do you think city systems should change in order to create a more language accessible New York City?
Yeah. I mean, let's be clear, language access is the law in New York City. So it's not a nice to have, it's a legally obligated to have. But agencies fall short a lot of the time. We do audits in the controller's office of agencies on their language access and show when their website's not up to snuff because the translation isn't good. Maybe they just had Google Translate do it, but it doesn't actually reflect how that language works. Or when there's a program that's taking place and multiple languages are needed, but there's not translation there in real time. Or when there's services that someone needs and they call the hotline, but they have to wait so long on the hotline to get a translator that they can't even get the services that they need. And we've showed in each case how those agencies can improve. I'm proud to say in my office, we have, I believe, one of the best language access programs of any city agency. And what we work to do is partner with community-based organizations or small businesses who have a language access program grounded in that community. So we're not relying on like Google. We know people in New York City who speak in the dialects and languages of the folks who we're trying to communicate with. That also means the money we're spending is getting out in communities, is helping small businesses grow, is supporting nonprofits. So that's what I'll do as mayor, is build on what I've done already in our language access program as controller. And there's a lot more opportunities like that. Think about a parent-teacher conference night in a New York City public school and just how many people, parents of those kids, need language access. Well, there's so many young people who speak both languages. Let's give them stipends. Let's hire them. We can make this a project that puts money out in communities and makes everyone welcome in our schools, in our shelters, in our public hospitals, in all of our city offices.
Okay, thank you. And one more question about affordability for housing and food. 1 in 4, or 25% of AAPI New Yorkers live in poverty in the city. And this, of course, is amid tariff increases, rising food costs, loss of federal funding to food pantries, on top of our growing housing crisis. What is your plan to address these different ranges of affordability for New Yorkers?
The affordability crisis is the #1 issue facing all New York communities, AAPI communities for sure, but really every single New Yorker. The asking rent for a 1-bedroom in New York now is over $3,500. People cannot afford the rent, they can't afford childcare at $25,000 a year. This is the #1 issue that I have been focusing on my entire career. Everyone's going to talk to you tonight about affordable housing. I've been working on it for 30 years. Before I was in city office, I spent 15 years running 2 housing nonprofits, the Fifth Avenue Committee and the Pratt Center, working with people in neighborhoods that once had abandoned buildings and now have housing no one can afford. In my time as a nonprofit housing developer, in the city council, and as controller, I've created or preserved over 50,000 units of affordable housing. I know how to get this done. I've got a plan to build 500,000 homes all across New York City. Here's my favorite part. You guys might be surprised to learn New York City owns 12 golf courses. Now, maybe there's a lot of golfers in the room, and if there are, there'll still be plenty of tee times on 8 courses when we take 4 of them and build new neighborhoods that will have 50,000 affordable homes for New Yorkers to rent or to buy. Because the city owns the land, we can make those units affordable, build great new neighborhoods with schools and parks and playgrounds and libraries. It is possible if we just have some ambition to protect tenants, make sure every tenant has a lawyer when you're in housing court, to build a lot more affordable housing, to provide free childcare for every 2- and 3-year-old, and expand after-school programs so families have a safe place for their kids, and to restore the path to home ownership so all New York families can thrive. we can confront the affordability crisis for AAPI families all year round.